Hi, welcome to Qrvey Quick Start Part 3, and in this part we're going to embed the dashboard that we just created. We're going to embed the dashboard in CodePen, and we're also going to make sure that we securely encrypt any sensitive properties, and we're going to do that with an endpoint in Postman. Before we get into that, let's give this dashboard a name. So I'm just going to highlight the untitled dashboard 1. I'm going to call it Quick Start Demo, and technically this is a change, so I'm going to republish that change, and we can just choose to overwrite the personalized versions. And here's how we're going to do this. We're going to click File, and we're going to go down to Embed. Okay, now this is the full and complete code that you need to embed the dashboard. But what we don't want to do is copy and paste everything we see here and just put it into CodePen, because likely you have a private key that's not a dummy value, right? You should actually see your private key here if you're following along. So we definitely don't want to copy and paste that into CodePen. What we're going to do first is call a Postman method to generate a JWT encrypted token of this JSON widget object. So let's go over to the documentation in Stoplight, and let's take a look at the endpoint that we're going to call. You'll find it under the administration collection, under the security subfolder, and it's called Generate Widget Security Token. It's a post method. So what you can do if you want is just copy this to the clipboard, and we're going to flip over to Postman and continue from there. Okay, here we are in Postman, and what we can do is we can start a new request. You can paste the endpoint that you got from Stoplight right here and just make sure that the HTTP verb is post. From there, let's go to the body, right? And we're going to pass the JSON configuration properties. So if you want to go back to Qrvey Composer and just copy the properties in the JSON widget config, you can do that now. And when you get back, just go ahead and paste them here. Now, not all properties can be encrypted. Some properties here are not sensitive. For example, the domain is not sensitive, and this property can't be encrypted. So we're going to take this out, and we'll see where that comes in a little bit later when we get to CodePen. Also, while the API key is very sensitive, perhaps the most sensitive property, we don't pass the API key to the endpoint because we have to be authorized to call the endpoint in the first place. So rather than passing the API key in the body, let's go ahead and remove this, and then we're going to flip over to authorization, and we're going to go ahead and define a key, x-api-key, and then you can paste the API key here as the value. Once you do that, let's check the body one more time. These are the sensitive properties that we're going to encrypt, and we're going to click send, and that will generate in the body a token. So let's go ahead and copy the generated JWT token to the clipboard. And now let's go back to the browser and finish the job. All right, here we are back in the browser. And if you want, you can paste your JWT token into Notepad temporarily, because we're going to need to copy and paste this widget embed code into CodePen. But as I mentioned before, please don't do a straight copy and paste of everything you see here, because you likely have a real API key here and you don't want to post that into CodePen. So if you're following along with me, I would copy this code into another page in Notepad, and I would remove the API key completely, and then you can go ahead and copy this code. And once you do, you can flip over to CodePen and start a new untitled CodePen page here, and in the HTML block, you can effectively paste the code. Okay, now this is live, so as soon as I paste the code, it will run it, and notice that it says you do not have permission to access the resource. And that's expected because the API key that I'm passing is not a real API key. Okay, so for starters, we never want to pass the API key here. So this is likely how you're starting. Now, remember that we did not encrypt the domain property. So we're going to leave it here because without this, the widget doesn't know where to access the resources to grab the embedded dashboard. Everything else we know was encrypted in the token. So we're going to remove it. And instead, we're going to add the JWT encrypted token. We need to define a new property, and it needs to be called Qrvey T token. And then the value for the string should be the token that we copied over from Postman. Now you'll notice that we have our dashboard here embedded, and it's fully interactive and ready to go. So I hope you found this quick start useful. In this quick start, we were able to connect to our data in part 1, we were able to build a dashboard in part 2, and we were able to easily embed that dashboard in part 3. Thanks for watching.